The screams that came from Hacienda San Miguel in Puebla, Mexico on the morning of August 15, 1843 were not human screams. They were the sound of a father discovering that his 4 daughters, all 4 of them, were pregnant by the same man. And that man wasn't a Spanish suitor, wasn't a neighboring landowner's son, wasn't someone of their class. It was Mateo, a 28-year-old slave that Don Ricardo Salazar had purchased barely 14 months before in the Veracruz market. When the doctor confirmed the impossible, when the dates aligned, when the truth fell upon the family like lightning, Don Ricardo Salazar knew he had 2 options: bury the scandal or destroy everything he loved in the process. He chose the second. What happened in the next 72 hours was so brutal that the Catholic Church tried to erase all records, so violent that the Mexican government sealed the archives for 180 years, so disturbing that aristocratic families in Puebla paid fortunes to ensure this story was never told. But secrets don't die. They only wait. This is the story of Mateo, the slave who defied all the laws of God and men, of 4 women who chose love above everything, and of a father whose revenge was so terrible it changed forever the meaning of the word honor in colonial Mexico. Puebla, Mexico. July 1842. The Mexico of the early 19th century was a country torn by violence and transformation. But for the aristocratic families who had preserved their lands and power, little had changed since colonial times. The hacendados remained absolute kings in their domains. Hacienda San Miguel was one of the most prosperous properties in the region. 600 hectares of corn, wheat, and maguey fields. 80 workers who lived in conditions barely superior to slavery. And in the center of everything, a white 2-story mansion with red tile roofs that shone like a beacon of power. Don Ricardo Salazar y Mendoza was 52 years old. A tall man, broad-shouldered, with a perfectly trimmed gray mustache and eyes that seemed capable of freezing the soul of anyone who dared contradict him. His wife, Doña Beatriz, was deeply religious, dedicated to praying the rosary and educating their daughters in piety and silence. But Don Ricardo's daughters had not inherited their mother's silence. Elena, 22, was the eldest. Raven black hair, dark eyes that shone with intelligence and rebellion. She had learned to read in secret and devoured any book she could find. Carmen, 20, was the romantic. She spent hours writing poems she would never show anyone, dreaming of a love that would be more than a marriage arranged for convenience. Lucía, 19, was the most curious. She always asked questions that made her mother uncomfortable. Why did the workers live in huts while they slept in silk beds? Isabel, 17, was the shyest. She observed everything from the shadows, but her clear green eyes missed no detail. These 4 women, educated to be wives of hacendados or wealthy merchants, were about to meet the man who would change their lives forever. The Veracruz slave market in July 1842 was not very different from a cattle auction. Don Ricardo wasn't looking for field workers. He was looking for something specific, someone educated, presentable, who could serve in the main house. When a young man named Mateo climbed onto the auction platform, Don Ricardo noticed something different. He was approximately 28 years old, light mulatto skin, medium height but strong build. What caught Don Ricardo's attention wasn't his physique, but his posture. He stood upright as if that platform were a stage and not a place of humiliation. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Mateo, estimated age, 28 years, knows how to read, write, and perform basic mathematical calculations. Warning, has had attitude problems with previous owners. Don Ricardo approached. Do you really know how to read? Mateo looked him directly in the eyes, something no slave should do. I know how to read, sir. I also know how to write in clear handwriting and keep accounting records. My father made sure I learned before selling me to pay his gambling debts. Don Ricardo decided this educated, resentful slave was exactly what he needed. He paid 400 pesos, double the initial price. During the journey to Puebla, Don Ricardo explained his plan. I have 4 daughters. All need education beyond embroidery and prayers. You will teach them mathematics, accounting, practical things. But if you try anything inappropriate, if you look at any of my daughters incorrectly, I'll have you whipped until your back is only exposed bone. Understand? Perfectly, sir. When they arrived at Hacienda San Miguel, Mateo was taken to Don Ricardo's study. 3 times a week you will give classes to my daughters, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You will teach arithmetic and accounting. No literature, no philosophy, no politics. That afternoon, Mateo met the 4 daughters. The class took place in the library. The young women entered dressed in light cotton dresses, all looking at him with barely concealed curiosity. Elena was the first to speak. How should we call you, Professor? Senor Mateo? Mateo is fine, señorita. Your father has charged me with teaching you practical mathematics. The first class was formally correct. Mateo taught fractions, percentages, how to keep account books. The 4 sisters were intelligent, far more than society allowed them to demonstrate. When Don Ricardo entered to supervise, Mateo said carefully, "They are exceptional students, sir, more capable than any university would admit." Don Ricardo frowned. Universities are for men. They need to know enough to manage a house, not to challenge their future husbands. But Elena looked at Mateo from across the room, and something passed between them. A silent understanding. Both were prisoners in different ways. The weeks that followed established a dangerous routine. It was Elena who first challenged the limits. One August afternoon, she closed her notebook and asked, "What else do you know besides numbers?" "Your father ordered me to teach you mathematics, señorita, nothing more. But here, in this room, couldn't we learn something that matters for real?" Elena leaned forward, eyes shining with defiance. In that moment, Mateo made a decision that would change everything. "If I teach you something beyond what your father ordered, we all run enormous risk. If we're discovered, I'll be whipped or sold. You would be punished." "We understand the risk," Elena said firmly, "and we accept it." Thus began the real lessons. During the first hour, Mateo taught mathematics. But in the second hour, he brought out ideas instead of numbers. He spoke of Rousseau and his social contract, of Voltaire's critique, of religious hypocrisy, of Mary Wollstonecraft and women's rights. Ideas so radical that the church had banned them. These conversations extended beyond formal classes. Elena began seeking out Mateo at other moments. She sat close, too close to be appropriate, and they talked for hours. Carmen developed a different connection. One day, she timidly showed him a notebook full of poems she had written in secret for years. Mateo read each word carefully. When he finished, he had tears in his eyes. "This isn't just good, Señorita Carmen. This is extraordinary. There's truth here." Real pain converted into beauty. Carmen began to cry. "No one had read my words before. You have a gift the world needs to hear." Lucía connected through impossible questions about justice and God. Isabel, though she barely spoke, observed everything with those green eyes that seemed to capture each detail. The other workers knew something was changing. They saw the light in the daughter's eyes, heard the longer conversations, but resistance meant death, so they carried the weight of knowing while being powerless. One November night, Elena appeared in Mateo's small room long after midnight. She entered without making noise, barefoot, with a shawl over her white nightgown. "Señorita, you can't be here," Mateo whispered, terrified. "If your father discovers my father sleeps drunk every night, my mother takes laudanum, no one will see me." She approached slowly. "Mateo, all my life I've done what others ordered, but with you, I learned. There's a world bigger than these walls, and I can't go back to pretending I don't know it." It was the first time she said his name without formality. The sound of that intimacy made something break inside both of them. "I choose this," she said firmly. "You're not forcing me. I'm asking you." What occurred that night violated every moral and social law of 1842 Mexico. But for Elena, it was the first moment where her body and will belonged completely to her. The nocturnal visits became routine. Elena came 2 or 3 times a week. Then Carmen began appearing too, seeking the same connection her sister had found. Then Lucía, asking if she could matter to someone. Finally Isabel, the youngest, saying she didn't want to die invisible. By February 1843, Mateo lived in constant anxiety. 4 different nights a week, a different sister visited his room. The sisters didn't speak among themselves about this openly, but each one knew. Strangely, there was no jealousy, only shared understanding that they all sought the same thing. It was Juana, the oldest slave in the house, who discovered it first. One night she intercepted Elena in the hallway. "Child, I know where you go every night, and I know your sisters go too." Elena paled. "Juana, please, I won't tell anything, but listen to me. This can only end one way, with blood, with death. The master always discovers." In March, Carmen noticed her monthly blood hadn't arrived. A week of delay became 2. She told Elena, who checked her own dates and felt the world stop. She was also late. The 4 sisters met in secret. When they shared their suspicions, the silence was absolute. All 4, all late, all potentially pregnant by the same man. "What are we going to do?" whispered Isabel. But the trap was already closing. That same afternoon, Doña Beatriz observed them from her window. Though she couldn't hear their words, she recognized the expressions fear, secret, guilt. She knew exactly what kind of secret made 4 sisters meet with those faces. Dr. Esteban Ruiz arrived at Hacienda San Miguel on March 15, 1843. Doña Beatriz asked him to examine all 4 daughters privately. When the examinations finished, Dr. Ruiz sought out Doña Beatriz. "Your 4 daughters are pregnant." The rosary fell from her hands with a sound like death bells. "All 4? "Yes." "By the dates, all are between 2 and 3 months along." Don Ricardo arrived that night exhausted from the city. His wife waited with brandy and terrible news. Dr. Ruiz examined them today. All 4 are pregnant. The silence that followed was absolute. Don Ricardo's brain made the connection immediately. The slave, Mateo. He stood so quickly the chair fell backward. Where is he? But first, Don Ricardo needed to hear it from his daughters. He ordered all 4 brought to the main salon. The doctor has told me you are all pregnant. Tell me he's wrong. Silence. Tell me he's wrong. Elena stepped forward. He's not wrong, father. Who dared to touch my daughters? No one forced us. It was our choice. You can't choose that. Tell me his name. Mateo, whispered Carmen. We went to him, all of us. Don Ricardo's world shattered. His slave, the man he had trusted. Lock my daughters in their rooms. They don't eat, don't drink, until I decide what to do with them. When the daughters were dragged away, Don Ricardo remained alone. What are you going to do? Asked Doña Beatriz. What I should have done the day I bought him. I'm going to kill him. Mateo was in his room when the door burst open. Don Ricardo entered, with armed guards. Stand up. Do you admit having raped my 4 daughters? I didn't rape them, sir. They came to me by their own will. Don Ricardo's fist hit him so fast Mateo didn't see it coming. He fell, blood filling his mouth. Kicks followed, blows to the stomach, ribs, back. When they stopped, Mateo could barely breathe. Their own will? Don Ricardo spat. How can ladies voluntarily choose a beast like you? Because I treated them like people, Mateo said. Like human beings with minds and hearts. Something you never did. The second beating was worse. Don Ricardo hit him until his knuckles bled. Take him to the stable, chin him. Tomorrow at dawn I'll whip him publicly, and afterward I'll hang him. The dawn of March 16th arrived with blood-red sky. Don Ricardo ordered everyone on the property to gather in the central patio. Mateo was dragged from the stable and tied to a wooden post. This man has profaned my daughters. 100 lashes, and if he survives, we'll hang him at noon. The 4 sisters were forced to watch from their locked windows. Elena pressed her hands against the glass. Carmen sobbed. Lucía prayed with tears running. Isabel stared, paralyzed. The first lash fell. Mateo's back opened immediately. 10 lashes, 20, 30. His back became destroyed flesh. Blood formed puddles in the dirt. At 50 lashes, Mateo finally screamed. In the windows, the 4 sisters screamed too. At 90 lashes, he lost consciousness. Don Ricardo ordered water thrown on him. He wanted him conscious for the last 10. When the 100th lash fell, Mateo was more dead than alive. Leave him there to bleed out slowly. But Juana, the old slave, was already planning rescue. That night at midnight, she used stolen keys to open the sisters' rooms. Tonight we escape. I'll free Mateo. We'll have horses ready. You'll flee to Veracruz and take a ship far from Mexico. The 4 sisters slipped down stairs they knew by heart. Juana waited in the stable where she had already freed Mateo from his chains. He was conscious, but barely. Elena fell to her knees beside him. Forgive me for bringing you this. Nothing to forgive. It was the only freedom I knew. Juana had 4 horses saddled. No time for goodbyes. Ride south. In San Martin village, find a man named Felipe. Tell him Juana sent you. They helped Mateo onto a horse. The pain nearly made him faint. The sisters mounted, none accustomed to riding but all willing. They were about to leave when a voice echoed from the shadows. Where do you think you're going? Don Ricardo emerged from the darkness with a pistol. He hadn't been drunk as they assumed he'd been waiting. Get down from those horses. Now. No one moved. Elena put her horse between her father and Mateo. You've taken everything from us. You won't take this. Elena, move. I don't want to shoot you, but I will, then shoot. I won't move. The silence was absolute. Father and daughter staring across the darkness, both stubborn, both willing to die. Then Carmen moved, trying to distract her father. The gunshot resonated like thunder. Carmen fell from her horse. Everything stopped. The sound of her body hitting the ground. Then screams from Elena, Lucía, Isabel, all at once. Don Ricardo stared at the pistol as if it were a strange object. No. I didn't mean she moved. Carmen still breathed, but barely. Elena lifted her, holding her in her arms. Carmen, stay with us. Please stay. It hurts, Carmen whispered. Her eyes sought Mateo. Was it worth it? Yes, Elena said, crying. Worth every moment. Carmen smiled. Then her eyes closed and her body relaxed. She was gone. Don Ricardo fell to his knees. What have I done? In the confusion, Juana grabbed Mateo. You have to leave now, before guards come. Elena kissed Carmen's forehead one last time. Lucía and Isabel sobbed, but Juana was right. Staying meant death. The three remaining sisters and Mateo rode into the night. Behind remained Carmen, Juana, the hacienda, everything they had known. Ahead was only darkness, pain, and the terrible question of whether any love could be worth such suffering. They fled to Veracruz, took a ship to Cuba, built new lives from ashes. The three babies were born in October 1844, weeks apart. Elena had a girl she named Carmen. Lucía had a boy she called Ricardo with bitter irony. Isabel had another boy named Mateo. They lived together, raising the children, sharing everything without jealousy. Not quite family in traditional sense, but more united than many legitimate families. Years passed. Elena died in a yellow fever epidemic in 1856. Lucía stopped eating after Elena's death and died in 1862. Isabel's heart simply stopped in 1868. Mateo survived them all, dying in 1870 at 56. Before dying, he wrote letters to the three children explaining the truth. Your existence was an act of love, not violence. Your mothers chose you knowing the price. You carry proof that love, when real, cannot be completely destroyed by any system of oppression. Meanwhile, in Mexico, Don Ricardo drank himself to death in 1845, murmuring Carmen's name in alcoholic delirium. Doña Beatriz lost her mind, found talking to empty chairs, calling them by her daughters' names. Hacienda San Miguel was sold. All records were burned. For over a century, the story remained buried, became rumor, then legend, finally myth. But in 1960, during renovations, workers found a metal box buried under the stable foundation. Inside was a letter from Elena, written in August 1843. If someone reads this someday, I want you to know we weren't victims, we were women who chose. And that choice, though it cost us everything, was the only time in our lives we were truly free. This is Buried Truths, where we refuse to let these stories disappear. 4 women who chose love over obedience. A man who treated them as equals. A father whose pride destroyed everything. Subscribe so these voices keep reaching people who need to hear them. Comment below, was their choice worth the price? Could love ever justify such tragedy? Until next week, keep digging for truth.